What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Web Applications, or I should say another edition of Mindset Monday. And you know what? I'm so happy on Mindset Monday when I actually don't have to be the person that's trying to put you in the right mindset because it's a lot of pressure on me, right? Like sometimes I actually am not in the right mindset. Remember a couple of weeks ago, I forget exactly how many Mondays ago it was, but I came on, I was like really honest and basically just said that I usually record my Mindset Mondays in the morning, and I waited until like 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon to do that one because I just wasn't ready to be, I wasn't in the right mindset, right? For one reason or another. But then during that actual episode, I had a little transformation. And by the end of it, I actually was in a better frame of mind. But you never know. Like, I never know how I'm going to feel on a Monday. But today, it doesn't matter. I'm feeling really good, by the way, today. But today, it doesn't matter because I have a guest on. And I love having guests on. So today's guest is someone that I actually met in a group on Facebook, and it may have been the ClickFunnels group. And if you remember, I had Paul Barry on too as a result of that sort of same thing, where I put something on Facebook group, just looking for participants in an online summit that I wanted to do, and it frankly got like ridiculed and shut down, and it just felt like unnecessarily. And so I had posted the same request in another group and got more positive feedback. And it definitely was the ClickFunnels group because they're just a more friendly community anyways. And so the woman that I met is someone who you will meet in a second. Her name is Jeanette Riles. And she is an entrepreneur who has gone through her share of challenges, which is why I wanted to have her on. She's gone through her share of challenges over the last year or so, which we'll get into in a minute. But she also has a course, and you guys have known, I talk about courses probably on this show more than, this is episode number 40, I think. And I think out of all the shows, I've talked about online courses probably more than anything, just because I feel like it's a great way to sort of earn another income without having to spend a lot of money to actually produce something and get it done. And certainly you don't have to create software like Follow Up Fuel in order to do it. So today's guest, again, is Jeanette Riles. She has a course called Goalhackers. I can't speak, Goal Hackers. Your 60 days to transform your business and your life. And she's going to tell us more about that and more about her. Jeanette, welcome to Web Applications.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I look forward to it.
Absolutely. So let's start with you. Talk to me a little bit about who Jeanette Riles is. And I guess I'll even be more specific and say, talk to me about your childhood and your upbringing, because I think that a lot of that sort of plays into who we are as adults. So tell me a little bit about that, where you were born and all of the dynamic of your growth as an adult.
Sure. So I grew up with a single mother and a brother and sister in southern Delaware. So I grew up at the beach, and we had very meager beginnings, but we had everything that we needed. And I think back then kids kind of dealt with having a lot less than they do now, because everybody around me pretty much had the same thing. So but when I was really young, I was 4 years old, I actually had open heart surgery. And after open heart surgery, we moved from Washington to the beach to kind of have a fun, uplifting atmosphere to grow up in. So I enjoyed school. I loved school. I was probably one of those weird nerds that just loved going to school. And I was involved in all kinds of activities, but I was really shy, and most people didn't know that. That I fought with that every single day of, I'm in everything and everybody thinks I'm very outgoing, but I'm very shy. So I kind of dealt with that all through high school. I went to college for sports medicine and phys ed studies because I loved sports and I was involved in sports. So I loved it. And then I did that for like a year. And I found out, you know what? I really don't love that part of it. I love dealing with professional athletes and I love the excitement of it, but it was like 4 or 5 a.m. until 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And I'm like, I'm working with people that make millions of dollars, and the littlest thing just throws them off, an injury or, having to travel or having to come into the training room and rehab. And I was like, you have the world by the tail. How can you be so upset? It's just a little bump and you just get through it and move on. So after I did that in South Florida, I moved to upstate New York, and I was looking for a job, and I answered an ad that said, looking for a sports-minded individual. I'm like, me, that's me. And so I started a career in insurance, of all things. And I went through sales school, loved it. The company was started by W. Clement Stone, which he's a pioneer of the positive mental attitude. And I loved sales school. And then I hit the field and I was like, you want me to go door to door and knock and talk to people that I've never met and sell them on the spot? I'm like, I can't do that. There's no way I could do it. But the first week you spent with your manager, and we did really well. And I enjoyed it. I was like, well, that's fun. I like meeting people. But then I had to go do it by myself. And I was like, I can't do this. I mean, I would wake up in the morning and I was just filled with anxiety, and I was so overwhelmed. I couldn't make myself get out of the car. So what happened was, I was probably 6 weeks into it. I mean, I was just like up all night long for 6 weeks. I'm like, I can't do this. If I'm with somebody, I'm fine. But if I'm by myself, I can't do it. So my sales manager said, why don't you meet me at this little diner? And I said, okay. And he looked at me dead in the eyes and said, your goals aren't strong enough for you to do this job. And I was like, what do you mean? I absolutely have goals. He said, what are some of your goals? I'm like, I want a house. I want a family. I want nice things. And he's like, yep, no, they're not strong enough. And I was like, devastated. I'm like, wait a second. I just spent like 8 weeks, and then I've been on the road 8 weeks again. And you're telling me that I don't have what it takes to do this job? So I was upset, and then I got a little mad, and he was like, why don't you take the rest of the day off? If you need to, take the rest of the week off and go home and figure out some strong goals for yourself. So I drove home, and it was like 45 minutes, and I was just like, here I am crying and furious at the same time. And so I said, okay, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to do my goals. But for the first, I would say 6 months to get myself out of the car and go to work, I had to give myself a physical prize, literally a prize for going to work every day. And I did that for 6 months. And then I was like, how many CDs and books and new shirts and new pairs of shoes can you have? So then I kind of changed it to, all right, if I go out in the field today, I can stick $200 and put that in my investment account. I can stick this much money into a vacation. So I was able to string the goals out a little bit longer. And then after about another 6 months, I was like, okay, now what? I've hit all these awards. I'm doing wonderful. I still don't enjoy it, but I love being around the people. And he says, why don't you just become a district manager or a regional manager? I said, well, what do I have to do? He's like, you just have to get the awards for it. Everything is based on merit. So do it. I'm like, so I could do your job? And he's like, yeah, you could work with people, train them. I'm like, oh, I could do that. So then I went, and within 3 years, I became the youngest executive in the company and went on to have great results and taught people all kinds of things. But that's where like the goal hacking started, because I thought, you know what? Most people that come into this job have no sales experience, number one, which is kind of crazy. You're going to be selling, especially face-to-face, door-to-door. I'm like, they really have to have strong goals. If they don't, they can't do it. So I started teaching everybody else exactly what I had gone through and said, listen, if we can get your personal goals strong enough, you'll be able to do this job with no problem. But if you don't have strong personal goals, there's nothing that I could do to help you become successful in this job. So that's what happened. And that's really where Goalhackers actually started, because I saw so many people. I probably saw thousands of people that had no goals written down. And because the company was started by W. Clement Stone, I every single day was exposed to such positive mental attitude and thinking that it changed my life, because I think I started out doing things from a position of fear. I was afraid to fail. I was afraid not to have money because we didn't grow up with any money. I was afraid to not be successful, basically. So that's where the whole Goalhackers actually started. So from there, corporate America kind of took over, and people were losing their jobs, being downsized. And I was like, wow, this is shocking. These people have been there for like 30 years. So I was like, what am I going to do to protect myself? And I said, you know what, I'm going to invest in real estate, and I'm going to make myself a passive base pad of money to be equal to what I make now, so that if anything ever happens to me, I'll be fine. And that's what I did at that point. I put myself back into sales from a management position. And so I kind of took myself totally out of the industry, and I went and did pharmaceutical sales, which, it integrated my sports medicine with my sales ability. So for me, I was able to do the job in a couple hours a day, what it took most people to do 8, 10, 12 hours.
Wow.
And that's where I started to learn about real estate. So I gave myself a 5-year plan to build up my portfolio to equal what I was earning. And that's what I did. So real estate is a big part of what helped me be able to step out of corporate America. But also everything that I had learned back in the insurance company really prepared me to actually start Goalhackers. And that's what I've been doing.
Talk to me about when your initial boss there said that your goals weren't strong enough, and then you needed to go home and really figure that out and think about, how to strengthen your goals, I guess. What's the difference? Like, what's the spread, I guess, between where your goals were initially and then where you figured out your goals needed to be?
Well, my goals were, I think it goes back from being afraid of not having money is why I went to work. So once I made the realization of, listen, these people are making 6 figures a year, their first year out. And I thought, that's a lot of money. I was 22 years old. Yeah, 22 years old when I started that job. And I thought, 6 figures, I could help my mother out. I could help my family out. So that's what I started to do, is say, what do I really want? And what I wanted was to not ever have to worry about money, which that's not a strong enough goal. You have to say, what personally is that going to do for me? That means I can go to sleep at night with no worries. If something happens in life, I can just say, hey, you write a check and you move on. But I wanted a nice house. I wanted to be able to help my family out. And I wanted to really have all of the things that I thought I needed at that point in time that I didn't have growing up. So I really made strong personal goals of having $1 million in my 401k within 10 years. That was a big one, because everybody in the company really talked about that. And I'm like, okay, we'll do $1 million. It's kind of like everybody online. Make 6 figures a year. And you're like, have you made 10 yet? Have you made 50? So, that's where I started. But my first year, I said, okay, let's make $60,000 this first year. Then let's go to the 125. Then let's go to the 200. So I started with very, very specific goals, because that's what people lack in. But I really started with what that means to me personally. I wanted to travel. I wanted to experience things that I had never done before. I wanted to be able to go see my sister in Florida. My mom lived in Delaware. I lived in upstate New York. So for me, the only way I was really going to get to be able to do that stuff is I had to have time flexibility, and I had to have the income to do it. So I really made all of my goals mean something to me personally. I didn't really say things like, oh, I want to go get a grand diamond, which was like the biggest award you could get with the company, because I was like, I don't really care about that. I need to be motivated personally. And I think that's why most people fail. They set goals that are important to somebody else, but they're not important to them. Like if my husband wanted me to make 6 figures, well, that's great. But why does he want it? So he can play golf? He would support me. But if I want 6 figures so I can take every summer off, then I'm going to work really, really hard and diligent, because I want the summer off. to go to the beach and spend time with my friends. So that was the biggest difference. I shifted from what the company wanted me to do to what do I want out of life.
With that said, because I'm curious, how is fair then? Because I know fair is a big motivator, right? Like, why is fair? Because I'm assuming fair is personal as well, right? Why is fair not a good way to, I guess, motivate oneself?
Well, you can definitely. I mean, the fear of not having money will make you go make money, but it's not going to last forever because eventually you're going to end up at a point where you're like, you know what? Money doesn't buy everything. So I don't really care if I have money. And if you're not at that point yet, my explanation to you is you haven't had anything really bad happen to you at this point. Once you go through something that you realize, you know what? Your health is the most important thing you have. So I think it's just making a shift from being motivated from something negative to something positive. I still don't like to fail. I mean, I'm a recovering perfectionist and I like everything just so perfect, but life is so messy and not perfect. It just doesn't work out that way. So I think if I'm being motivated from, I don't want to have, I don't want to lose my house and I don't want my wife to say, hey, you got to go get a job because I need to make this amount of money. That's great. But wouldn't it be a little different to say, we all want to go to Disney World next year at Christmas. Mm-hmm. So mommy or daddy is going to work extra hard 3 days a week. So maybe you're not going to have dinner with mom or dad Monday, Thursday, and even Saturday morning, you're not going to have breakfast. But next year at this time, for 2 weeks, we're going to go to Disney and have the time of our life. I think that just motivates a little bit easier than something negative.
Yeah, I find too is that it sustains itself a little bit longer as well, right? Yeah. Like to your point where money is the attainment or the goal to have a certain amount of money is fleeting. And especially if, you're in a situation where, you talked, and I want to ask you this a little bit, you say in your old company, somebody wants to get to $1 million in their 401k, or you see it online, of course, all the time where people's goals are to make six figures and they haven't even made $50,000 yet. Like it's easy to sort of get, discouraged, I guess, if you will, if you end up not on track by September of that year or something like that. Right. But at the same time, if you have something that's a little bit bigger and more sort of tangible, like you said, a trip to Disney World or something like that, I think that definitely is more energizing. So let me ask you this then, as it pertains to that, how should someone then, I guess, set their financial goals to the point where, again, $10,000 a month is another one, right? It's like that 10 grand a month, right? Which ends up being 120,000 for a year. Like, how should someone look at that and start setting a goal if if their goal is a financial goal, let's just say?
Okay. So the first thing you need to do is ask yourself, what is the money going to do for you? It's the do for you that is the actual motivator. So like for me, I don't know anyone in their right mind that would want to buy 100 real estate units. And that's what I tell people. You say you want 100 units. Once you have many, many, many units, you will figure out why you don't want 100 units. It's not the units that gets you what you want. It's the whole ball of wax. It gets you not really passive income. It gets you monthly income. I'll use cash flow. Okay. So it's the cash flow that gets you what you want. It's not necessarily, the 100 real estate units, because you could do it with anything. So if you have a financial goal, you have to sit there and ask, what is the financial goal going to do for you? Does that mean you get to go from an apartment to your own house, from your own house to a bigger house, from a bigger house to a compound? What is the underlying issue that you're getting from the money? So I use money as a business goal because personally, like you said, it's not going to motivate you. But the way I teach is you motivate short-term personal, short-term business, long-term personal, long-term business. So it's not that you don't use that goal. It's that you start with all your personal things first. So if I want to travel and I want to do all this stuff, that's my personal thing. I use business as the vehicle to get you that. So it's not that you don't use them. Okay. So for example, like on my vision board, I have all the things that I want. And then on my other board, you might not be able to see this because it's backwards, but I have all the ways I'm going to do it. That's the motivator for the business side, is what's going to be the vehicle to get me everything that I want personally. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And by the way, since we're not using Facebook, I can actually see. It's not backwards.
Oh, okay, good.
Which is good. Yeah, Facebook, it's always like it turns around.
Yeah,
makes it look like you're looking in a mirror. Yeah, and talk to me about that. Because again, I was then preparing for this interview. I was looking at your YouTube videos, and you talk about vision boards as well there. Where does that come in? Why are vision boards so important?
Well, one of the biggest things I hear from women is that I can't get my husband on board, or my husband won't support me, or my boyfriend won't support me, which is a whole different game. But if you have somebody in your family that isn't supportive, the only reason they're not supportive, unless you have some issues, is because they don't understand why you want it. They have no idea. And I'll give you a real world example of this, because when I married my husband, I knew that he loved golf. I knew it. He was in a golf league on Wednesdays. He played on the weekends. So I understood that he loved golf. But every year he would go away on this event, and it's called the big event. So they've been doing this for 20 years. They go to Scotland, all over the US. They all meet high school friends and play golf. And some are great and some are horrible, and they just get together for fun. And I was like, wait a second, you're going away on vacation and I'm not going. That made zero sense to me. But once I saw what motivated him, I'm like, I get it. Golf is the only thing that relieves him from the day-to-day business things. So that's what clears his mind, and that's what grounds him. So if you kind of look, this is his vision board. It has almost everything golf. This is the big event. Golf, these are places that he wants to play. He's motivated by golf. So does that make any sense for me to get upset that he wants to go play golf? No. Right. That means I need to motivate him to go play golf and do the business goals behind it so he can play golf. So it was a total shift in my attitude of, why is he playing golf? He plays golf because it takes all the stress and pressure of life away from him. That's what I want for him as his wife. So how do I do that? Well, when he's away, what does that mean? That means I get to go away as well and see my girlfriends, or spend time with my mother, or go someplace new for myself. And guess what I don't get? I don't get any backlash. I don't get a wink of the eyes. I don't get the, hey, we don't have the money for that. I get none of that, because I support him for what he wants to do. Then I get the support of what I want to do.
This is very interesting and eye-opening, because I've obviously heard vision boards, and you need to sort of create one and all that. But what you're saying here is that, which is interesting, is that the vision board in this case study, I guess, if you will, is almost for the other people in your life, right? Some of the people that are closest to you. And it's funny, like with entrepreneurs, or even especially in the MLM community, right, where people just don't understand them. They don't understand what they're doing and all this stuff. And it's hard to sort of get everybody on board with what you want to do. And that example that you just mentioned with, let's say, telling, the kids about not having Saturday morning breakfast and all that. But if you had a vision board for it and saying, like, not just, you're not going to have, we're not going to do Saturday mornings because this is why, but actually showing them and saying, like, here, this is where we could be a year from now, just by, us not being together for 3 hours this morning or something like that.
Right.
So that's really cool. That's a good perspective.
Well, and the other thing too, is we do one together. So I have my vision board, so he knows what's important to me, but then we also have our vision board that we want to travel to all the baseball fields in the US. We want to help single parent children learn how to set goals themselves, so that they don't feel like they don't have a way out of the situation or the family life that they're currently in, especially if it's bad. And so we have things together that we do, and that makes us a whole family. But like tonight, he has to work until 7:30 or 8 tonight. Okay, I understand why he's doing that. And I'm okay with that. So that allows me to maybe work on some of my personal goals a little bit, allows me to go walk my dogs, do things that I can't get done normally during the week. But I think by seeing it, I mean, if I say I want to go exercise, it doesn't matter what time of day I want to exercise. If I say that to him, he's like, oh, well, are you going to go take a class? It doesn't matter. Is it in the morning? Is it in the evening? Is it on the weekends? Because I have a couple Zumba classes that I love, and they're only available on Saturday and Sunday. Well, most people like to spend time on Saturday and Sunday as a family, but you know what? That's time that he gets to spend and just hit golf balls in the garage, or he calls his friends and goes to play golf. I never have to worry about having support. That's why when people tell me, I can't get my husband to support me, I can't get this, I can't get that, I'm like, you're going about it the wrong way. What you're doing is saying, you're not supporting me, I need your support. And they're hearing, la, 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 la. But if you say, listen, this is what I'm trying to do for us. By the way, how about you do one? And let me tell you, it takes some time, effort, and energy to get the other person that isn't used to doing things like that to participate. But once they understand, wait a second, if I put pictures of everything I really want up there, she's not going to hassle me. Like, I want to play cards with the guys on Thursday night because I like to let my hair down and not stress about life. Okay, go play card with your buddy. You know, I mean, it's just a very simple way to get on the same page and not have to continually say, you're not supporting me. I need this, I need that, because, you know, that's overwhelming. If someone said that to me every day, you're not giving me what I need. How many times can you hear that before you're like,
right?
You know, you can only hear that so many times. But we move these to the living room. So these are in my office. Every night they come out, we walk by them, we look at them. And I have a whole process of what you need to do to actually attain that. And it's very simple. It doesn't add any more time in your day. But, you know, if I say, you know what, I want to go, there's a huge sale on shoes because we buy a lot of shoes for an orphanage and for a group of kids locally, some in Delaware. He's on board with it. We've gone and bought 3 carts of shoes because he knows that's important to me. So it's just a very easy way to let everybody in your family know what's important to you. Same thing for the kids. I mean, if you did a vision board with your children and said, okay, well, we have kind of 3 categories. Personally, what's important to you? What's important to you, you know, spiritually, whatever your beliefs are. How about helping other people in charity? And you teach them, you know, money isn't everything, but money does allow you to help a lot of people. You'll see a shift even in children, because I have a couple of teenage girls that actually help me with the lawn and stuff like that, just because I want to help kids learn how to work, because I think that's one thing that's really lacking today is work ethic. And they've seen my vision boards and they were like, will you tell us about that? And I said, yeah. And they're like, wow, I wish this was taught in school. And I'm like, yeah, I really wish it was too.
Right.
So, but it's a very simple way to get everybody in the house on the same page.
It's interesting. I was going to ask you, but you answered the question. I was going to ask you how difficult it was to get your husband to do his vision board.
Well, you know, I may do it now type of person, because that's what I was taught when I was 20 is if something needs to be done, just get it done. I always do the worst thing or the hardest thing Monday morning first, right out of the chute. I don't have to worry about it anymore. He is not wired like that. He is I'll do it when I feel like it last minute type of person, which is very difficult though for those 2 type of personalities to get along. But what I did was I stuck the blank thing on the table, and then I said, hey, when you get some time, could you look through some stuff and put what's really important to you on there? And he's like, well, like what? And I said, whatever you want to do over the next year. You know, do you want to go play golf anywhere? Do you want to take any trips anywhere? Anything specific that you want to do? And he's like, okay. So he thought about it for a couple weeks. And then I stuck a stack of magazines next to the paper. So I helped wheeled it along. But then once he saw my board, he's like, wow, you have a lot of stuff on there. And I'm like, yeah, I have a lot of stuff to attain. I have big goals to hit, and this is what I want this year. So then he was like, okay. Then he started flipping through some stuff. And he's like, hey, I can't find a picture of Pebble Beach. And I'm like, just download it from the internet. You know, we can just glue it right on the board. So once he saw mine start to come together, I would leave it right out on the counter. So he had to walk by it and see it. Now, some might be saying, well, that's a little manipulative. No, it's encouraging, because I'm not going to hound him. If you hound somebody to do something, they're not going to do it. Just out of sheer personal respect, they're going to be like, stop bossing me around. I'm a grown adult.
Right.
So that's what I did. But it literally took him probably 3 or 4 weeks to actually get it done.
I thought you were going to say 3 or 4 months. That's not bad.
No.
Okay.
3 or 4 weeks. Yeah.
Where does belief come into that? And what I mean by that is that, let's say, for instance, you put your vision board together, or I'll even take it a step away from that, where somebody like you and I just sort of mentioned that somebody who hasn't made $50,000 yet now all of a sudden wants to make $10,000 in a month. And you and I are looking at it going, okay, that's a good goal, but maybe you should slow down a little bit. And when you're putting board together and your husband's looking at it, what's the sort of reticence there? If you're feeling like, he's going to think this is silly, or they're not necessarily going to believe what I believe in. And like, how do you sort of, I guess, think
how do you kind of deal with that?
Yeah.
Well, here's my feeling is, I am willing to put the work in behind whatever I want. Mm-hmm. And he knows that because he's seen me do things. So I guess it starts from, what are you showing your family? Are you showing them that, after the kids go to bed, that you're staying up for 2 hours working on your projects to get things set, or work on your business to get things done? Or are you getting up early before everybody else? Or I think a lot of it goes from, how do you act around the house? Because if you're positive around the house and you talk about the things that you want and you have things scheduled, like, do you have vacations scheduled? Do you have parameters around what your goals are scheduled? For me, I have dates behind everything that I do, because that's how I set goals. If it doesn't have a specific deadline, you're probably not going to hit it. You may come close. You may peter out. But I like to kind of have every single action step, so I don't have to worry. All I have to do is pick up my paper and say, oh, that's what's on the thing next. This has to be done. And until I go and get that done, I can't move on to the next step. So he has seen me. I mean, I do it with groceries. I do it with walking the dogs every day. I do it with the way I exercise. So he knows that this is gonna come true unless something happens to me. But I think, like, in the case of somebody that wants $10,000 in a month, and I would say that's a great goal, and we're gonna get to it. But before we hit 10, we have to hit 1,000. So let's put the actions behind the 1,000, the actions behind the 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 10,000. If you're willing to do all of this to get to that 10,000, the deadline is yours. So if you want that deadline in 3 months, then you have to be willing to do all of these steps. That's how I kind of walk people back. Because like, a perfect example is somebody will say, I need to lose 40 pounds in 2 months. And I'm like, how long did it take you to gain 40 pounds?
Right.
Probably a couple years. And I'm like, okay, well, let's look at the activities that need to be put in place to lose 40 pounds. Every pound is 3,500 calories. That means every workout, if it's a good workout, is probably around 350 calories. Are we starting to see the math here? That means you're working out 5 or 6 times a week, and you're crunching your calories down to really clean eating. Are you willing to do that? Yeah, I'm willing to do that. Okay, we put the plans in place. Now what happens when one of your kids gets sick? How are you going to work out that day? Well, I don't know. Well, you have to know now, because it's going to happen at some point. And you need to know what you're going to do in that situation, that scenario. And that's the level of detail I take people through of setting their goals, because life happens. Everybody has wrenches and hammers and everything else thrown into it. So we have to plan for that before it even happens.
That's a good point, a good way to segue into what happened to you, I think in 2008, is that right?
No, it happened. It
No,
happened
I
in
meant not 2008, 2018.
2018.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. With your health issue.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So for the last 10 years, I had been getting really, really tired. And we used to rehab at properties, and I did real estate. I would, move stacks of wood to train, because I did a marathon with my sister on my 40th birthday. And so I was normally used to doing a lot of stuff. And then my husband would be like, "Are you feeling okay? Because you look really tired." And I'm like, "No, I feel really tired." And I had told this to the doctors for years and years. And I got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and we're like, okay, well, that could be why I'm a little tired. But I still tried to do the same thing every day. And then I'm like, you know what? This isn't right. It's noon, and I feel like I need a nap. And I was only 49 at the time, almost 50. And I'm like, wait a second. I mean, I have friends that are 60 and 70 that are blowing my doors away. Something's wrong. So I went to the doctor, and he said, you know what, let's just do an MRI. I'm like, okay. So didn't think much of it. I went home and visited my mom, because my husband was on one of his big events. And I said, all right, we're going to go walk the dog. So the phone rang at my mom's house, and they said, we need to speak with Jeanette. This is Dr. So-and-so from neurosurgery in New York. And I'm like, neurosurgery? I'm like, that doesn't sound good. And they're like, hi, we need to schedule you an appointment. I'm like, for what? And they're like, you don't know? And I'm like, know what? And they finally said, hold on a second, we're going to go get the doctor. And I'm like, I'm sitting right in front of my mother, and I'm like, trying not to show any fear or anything, because I didn't want her to be upset.
Yeah.
And finally what happened is they're like, Jeanette, we hate to be the one to tell you over the phone like this, but this is kind of extenuating circumstances. You have a brain tumor. And I was like, what? And they're like, yes, you have a brain tumor. And because the location of the brain tumor is directly in the center of your head, we're not going to be able to biopsy it. And I thought, oh my God. I think like my whole life went from color to black and white in like 3 seconds.
Jeez.
And I was like, uh-oh. So, they set the appointment. I talked to my mom finally, and I was like, I'm not going to call Joe and tell him this until he's done having his fun with his friends, because who the heck wants to get news like that? I mean, it was just life shattering. So after I thought he was over, his big event, I called him and I told him, now my husband is a doctor. Oh. So the first word that came out of his mouth really scared me, because he never talked like that. So he said a 4-letter word, and I was like, okay, this really isn't good, because that's what he said. So, we came back to New York. I went to the doctors, and they're like, well, our options are to just go in and take it out, or wait and see how fast it's actually growing. And so, this was right around like Christmas time, and we're like, great, how in the world do you enjoy life? You don't know if you have brain cancer, what this tumor is doing, or anything. So of course, for the first couple of months, we were just like shattered. We didn't know what to do. We didn't know how to act, because we didn't know really what it involved. And then finally, I looked at him and I said, you know what, this is crazy. If this is my last time on earth, I certainly don't want it to be like this, because this is pathetic. We're sitting here crying, watching TV, watching our Hallmark shows, and I get up in the morning, all I think about is, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. I'm like, I can't do that anymore. I said, how about we do this? We don't deal with it until we have to deal with it. I'm going to live every single day to the best way that I can, and I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to compartmentalize it back here. until it gets to a point we have to decide about it. But this is crazy. I can't live like this. I need hope. I need positive thoughts, and I need positive energy around me. I can't live like this. And that's what we did for, probably 8 or 9 months. Every time I would go back, they're like, it's growing. And I'm like, okay, fine. All right. Yep. Get it. Okay. And I would just be like, there's not much I can do about it. They can't tell me what it is. So we just lived with it for that period of time. And then we went in and the doctor said, unfortunately, we're going to have to operate. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut you across the eyes, and then we're going to cut you here, and we're just going to do this. And I almost fell out of the chair. I was like, what?
Wow.
And my husband, I looked at him, and we asked this doctor, we're like, how many tumors have you seen like this? And he's like, well, I'm in the general area every week. And I looked at my husband, and I'm like, that doesn't work for me as far as an answer goes. So we went and found a surgeon at Johns Hopkins who has to be an angel in a doctor's coat, because we went down there. We didn't know what he was going to say, because I was really at this point just praying that they could go up through my nose and get this tumor out. So I had convinced myself, no, I'm not going to think like that. I'm going to think positive thoughts. And that's what I did. We went there and he goes, well, unfortunately, it can't come through your nose because it would kill you. And I'm like, okay, that option's off the table. He goes, and what we need to do is we need to cut you from here to here and take as much of the tumor out as possible. Unfortunately, we're probably not going to be able to get all of it because of where it's situated. And the type of tumor you have is very rare, but it's an aggressive grower that likes to stick to everything. And I was like, okay. I wore my mother's mustard seed chain that I had given her, so if somebody doesn't know what that is, it says, if you have the belief of a mustard seed, that is enough basically for God.
Wow. Okay.
And so I gave that to my mom, and she wanted me to wear it to this appointment. So I did. And most neurosurgeons don't believe in God because they believe they basically are God.
Right.
So my doctor looked at me, he goes, listen, I can do the best that I've been trained to do. And because you believe, it's really going to be up to him. And I was like, okay, this is a sign from God that this is the guy I need doing my surgery, because he believes in God. And that's why we took him, because we're like, he believes in God and he does these type of tumors. So because it's rare, it was kind of hard to find somebody that did it. And I told him, listen, I want to go on a mission trip before you do this. And I want Joe to go away on his big event, and then I'll schedule it, because I need to be in the right mindset to handle this. And I want to be able to give back to people in case I am not functioning after surgery. And he said, you know what? That's a great idea. You tell me when that is, and we're going to do it a week when you come back. And that's what we did.
Wow.
So I went away on the mission trip, and it was the best thing I could have ever done. We went to Cozumel, my girlfriends and I, and we have a charity called the Crew Project. And we went and helped kids that have no shoes and have very little school supplies. And in that country, not everybody gets to go to school. They pick usually the smartest child in the family, and they go to school. And we also went to an orphanage and, just saw so many things. And I was like, you know what? These people have nothing, and they're so happy. And I thought, you know what? There was a reason for me to see this. There was an absolute reason. So when I came back, we scheduled surgery, and I was just like, okay, I have to go through this. So my biggest fear, honestly, was for my husband, because I felt, you know what, once they have me under, I'm not going to know what goes on. He's the one that's going to have to deal with not knowing, and what am I going to be like when I wake up? Because the prognosis really wasn't good. It was, if you do go through this surgery, you might make it, you might be a vegetable, you might not be able to think, you might not. So, we had everything. We're like, I'm not thinking that, you know, and 7 times before I went through surgery, you do realize that you could die on the table. I'm like, okay, enough of that. I need positive thoughts in here. You guys can all go away. So I really was trying to protect every bit of positivity that I could and just think good thoughts. And I would think, well, you know what? If this doesn't work out and I'm not here, I'm going to a better place. I'm just worried about my family. And that's how I tried to look at it. And that's how I've tried to deal with all of the side effects and all of the things I kind of have to deal with on a day-to-day basis is I'm still here. So clearly I have some message to bring to people that it wasn't my time yet. And that's kind of how we have tried to deal with everything.
Wow, that is the epitome of a lot of things. Perseverance. The epitome of selflessness. The fact that you're thinking of, you know, helping others and going on the mission, thinking about your husband. It's absolutely amazing that you were able to do that. And just again, you mentioned a number of different times, like positive thoughts, positive thoughts, positive thoughts. And that is encouraging, inspirational. And, you know, we led into this as you saying, like, it doesn't matter what you've got going on, you know, like you can do it if you set your mind to it and all that stuff. And I think that's just a good way to end Mindset Monday, because that really, people, is what it's all about, right? I mean, brain tumor, getting that diagnosis and being able to, you know, you're brood over it for a little while, but then you say, you know what, I'm picking myself back up. And I'm going to continue to live this life of meaning, even not just as, you know, where you were just going to go on some sort of crazy shopping spree and, you know, spend all your money and do all this other stuff, but just a life of impact and meaning. I think that's phenomenal and admirable. So thank you for sharing that. And obviously it goes without saying, I'm really happy that you were able to come through that, and wish you well moving forward.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate having me on here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This is fantastic. So, guys, definitely. One other thing, talk to me and share with us about how people can get in touch with you. And then more importantly, how to find Goalhackers.
They can go right to JeanetteRiles.com and you can see some of the stuff we're starting to work on. I had to take a little bit of a hiatus there to rehab, so we're building things back up, but you can go to JeanetteRiles.com and send me a message and schedule time with me. If you're in the State College, Pennsylvania area around October 22nd, I'll be doing a workshop on the strategy behind planning goals, so feel free to come to that event and see me there live. Or you can reach out to me on social media.
Fantastic. And I'll put a link to Jeanette. Was it Jeanette? What's the website? It goes JeanetteRiles.com.
JeanetteRiles.com.
Okay. Yeah. I'll put a link to that in the episode notes as well. All right. Thank you very much. I really appreciate this. This is great.
Absolutely. Thank you.